The number in the brochure says somewhere around 2 litres per 100 kilometres. That's the figure quoted when you ask about running costs. That's the number the extra $5,000 on the purchase price was built on. Real-world data, not laboratory conditions, not a controlled route on a mild autumn day, consistently puts the actual average much higher, closer to 6 litres per 100 across large numbers of real vehicles. That gap nearly triples your fuel cost. And in Queensland, northern WA, or anywhere that runs air conditioning hard for most of the year, it gets worse. That's problem one. But it's not what I want to talk about today. There's a warranty and consumer rights issue inside the Australian hybrid market that almost nobody raises at the point of sale. It involves what your battery warranty actually covers and what the Australian consumer law gives you above that, which your dealer is not required to mention. I also want to cover something that's specifically Australian, specifically relevant to anyone who got into a PHEV through salary packaging or a novated lease, and that I haven't seen raised anywhere else. I know what you might be thinking. My hybrid has been fine. Fair enough. This isn't about whether the car runs. It's about whether the information you were given when you bought it was complete. I spent my working life around drivetrains and dealerships. I understand what the service department knows about these vehicles. That knowledge doesn't always make it to the forecourt conversation. That's what this is about. Let me start with how a hybrid drivetrain works in practice, because it matters for everything that follows. The electric motor handles the heavy lifting in low-speed, stop-start conditions. That's where the system earns its keep, accelerating from lights, crawling through suburban streets, slowing into roundabouts. The regenerative braking captures that energy and feeds it back to the battery. The combustion engine carries the load at highway speeds, under hard acceleration, and whenever the battery charge drops low. That's the architecture. The fuel economy test that produces the brochure number is run in conditions designed to get the best out of that architecture. Controlled speed, moderate temperature, minimal air conditioning load. In those conditions, the combustion engine barely runs. The result looks extraordinary on paper. The problem is what happens when you drive the car in Australia. In Queensland, in Perth, in Darwin, the air conditioning runs constantly for months. The AC compressor draws directly from the hybrid battery. The battery depletes faster. The combustion engine kicks in sooner, and when it does, it often runs at higher revs to recharge the pack. That's the first thing the brochure figure doesn't account for. Get onto any highway at 110 kilometers an hour for a sustained run, and in Queensland, you're doing a lot of that. The electric motor is contributing almost nothing. You are driving a petrol car, specifically a heavier petrol car, because the battery pack adds significant mass. That weight gets moved up every rise. The combustion engine works harder than an equivalent car without the battery would in the same conditions. The longer the run, the less the hybrid system gets to do its job. Look, I want to be fair about this, and being fair is the whole point. If your driving is genuinely suburban, short trips, dense stop-start traffic, a temperate part of the country where the air conditioning isn't running flat out every day. In that environment, the regenerative system earns its keep, and the efficiency case holds up better than what I've just described. I'm not dismissing that. I'm asking you to be honest with yourself about whether that's actually your driving pattern, or whether you were told it would work out either way. If you're finding this useful and want to keep across what's actually happening in this market, there's a subscribe button there. It takes 2 seconds. Now, the premium. The fuel economy gap matters because the entire financial case for the hybrid premium rests on it. Most hybrid variants cost meaningfully more than their standard petrol equivalent. Verify the current figure on the specific model you're looking at, but it's typically in the thousands. That premium needs to be recovered through fuel savings before the hybrid puts a single dollar back in your pocket. Here's the calculation that almost never happens at the desk. Before you commit to any hybrid purchase, ask the salesperson this. Can you run the break-even calculation on the hybrid premium using the real-world fuel consumption figure, not the test cycle number, the actual real-world figure? The NRMA and RACQ both publish independent real-world fuel economy results for Australian market vehicles. Find the real-world number for the model you're looking at. Divide the hybrid premium by that monthly saving. That number in months is your break-even point. Look at it before you sign anything. Most buyers have never seen that number. Most sellers have never offered it. That brings me to Trevor, 63, semi-retired, bought a plug-in hybrid SUV a couple of years earlier, specifically on the efficiency pitch. Low running costs, real fuel savings. He'd done his research, trusted the figures, and paid the premium. When he came into trade, he was confident the car had been good to him. The used car buyer ran the wholesale number and came back lower than Trevor expected. No explanation given. Trevor looked at the offer and said, "That can't be right. I've barely touched the engine." As dealer principal, I pulled the buyer aside. He'd flagged the battery state of health. That's the diagnostic reading of the battery's remaining capacity, sitting at 78%, still above the warranty threshold, technically within spec. But the buyer knew where that number was heading, and the wholesale market for PHEV trade-ins had already started reflecting it. Trevor didn't know what battery state of health meant until that conversation. I gave him the full picture, what the buyer was seeing, why the number sat where it did, and what to ask before he bought his next car. He left knowing something he hadn't walked in with. You don't need me in the room for that, but you do need to know what to ask. The warranty question and the consumer rights issue that sits underneath it, that's where we're going next. Here's what the battery warranty actually says, in plain terms. Most manufacturers warrant the hybrid battery for a set period and kilometer limit, with a minimum remaining capacity threshold, typically around 70% of original capacity. If the battery degrades to just above that threshold at just under the kilometer limit, it's a conforming product. The manufacturer owes you nothing. The warranty is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The part worth sitting with is this. A battery at 70% capacity in a vehicle whose entire financial case was built on 100% battery performance is a materially different product from what you paid for. The warranty threshold is a legal minimum, not a quality standard. Those are not the same thing. What most hybrid buyers don't know is what comes above the manufacturer warranty. This is what I want to be clear about because I haven't heard it raised in this context. Under the Australian Consumer Law, that's the Consumer Protection Framework in the Competition and Consumer Act, consumer guarantees apply to all goods sold in Australia regardless of what the manufacturer warranty says. The law requires that a product be of acceptable quality for a period that's reasonable given the price paid, the nature of the goods, and any representations made about it. For a $50,000 vehicle sold on specific efficiency and performance claims, a battery that degrades significantly sooner than a reasonable person would expect may give you rights that sit entirely above the manufacturer warranty threshold. This is not automatic. The manufacturer will not offer it voluntarily. Pursuing these rights takes documentation and persistence. But the warranty card in your glove box is not the ceiling of your legal protections. Your State Fair Trading Office, or the ACCC directly, has published guidance on consumer guarantees for motor vehicles. That's where to start if you need it. I walked through that workshop every morning for years. When hybrid vehicles came in for routine servicing, the battery state of health data was right there in the diagnostic output. Whether the service advisor communicated it to the customer, that varied. Some of the blokes I employed would flag it every time. Others filed it in the job card and moved on. The customer drove out not knowing where their battery actually sat. You can ask for that information at every service appointment. Say this specifically. Can you run a full battery state of health diagnostic and give me a printed copy of the result? That's a reasonable request. Most franchise Toyota, Hyundai and Kia dealers can produce it. If you get significant resistance, that's information in itself. Now, the novated lease situation. I had novated lease company reps through my yard for years, blokes I got to know. I understand how those deals are built. The financial case is calculated using running cost projections, and fuel costs for a PHEV are projected using the advertised litres per 100 kilometres figure, not the real-world figure. If your actual consumption is materially higher than what the lease paperwork assumed, and we've established that it likely is, your real running costs are higher than the package anticipated. That difference comes out of your pocket, not the provider's. There's also the FBT question. That's fringe benefits tax, the tax applied to certain employer-provided benefits, including vehicles. The rules around PHEVs and FBT in Australia have been subject to change and may continue to be. I'm not going to state the current position as fact here because it may have shifted again by the time you're watching this. What I will say is this. If the FBT treatment of your PHEV was part of the financial case for buying it, verify the current position with your accountant before any renewal decision. Don't assume the terms as you understood them at signing still apply. If you're in a novated lease on a PHEV, ask your provider this. Can you rerun my running cost estimate using double the advertised litres per 100 kilometres figure? I want to see what my fuel component looks like at real-world consumption. Look at what the deal looks like at that number. Look, there are genuinely good hybrid vehicles on the Australian used market right now. Some of them are a solid buy for the right buyer in the right conditions. What I'm telling you is that battery state of health doesn't appear on the listing. isn't required to be disclosed, and is often genuinely unknown to the private seller who received the vehicle from a fleet arrangement. Fleet vehicles doing predominantly highway kilometers in Queensland or WA heat are not ideally suited to hybrid battery health. Ask for a written battery state of health report before you sign anything. If you can't get one, factor the cost of a potential battery replacement into your offer. Here's what sits with me most about all of this. The buyer who ended up on the wrong end of this story did everything right. Read the brochure, check the official fuel economy guide, ask the salesperson. Trusted a figure from a licensed dealer based on a government-approved test. They weren't careless, they weren't naive, they were working with the information available to them at the desk. The real-world data existed, the consumer law protection existed, the battery diagnostic existed, none of it was required to be in that forecourt conversation, and so it wasn't. Greg Mercer for Section 3. The common thread across everything I've covered is this: nothing I've described is a secret. The real-world consumption data exists. The battery degradation curve is understood by every manufacturer and every service department. The Australian consumer law protection exists. None of it was required to be part of the point-of-sale conversation. And a system that doesn't require full disclosure will not volunteer it. That's not cynicism, that's how it works. The real-world L per 100 kilometres in Australian conditions is materially higher than the test figure ASH, particularly with AC load, highway driving, and in warm climates. The break-even on the hybrid premium, calculated honestly, often doesn't land within the average Australian ownership period. The battery warranty threshold is a legal minimum, not a quality standard, and the ACL protection that sits above it won't be offered voluntarily. For PHEV novated leaseholders, running costs and FBT terms need verification before any renewal. Any used PHEV off fleet needs a battery state of health diagnostic before purchase. You don't need to carry all of that. Pick the piece that's most relevant to where you are right now. Now, here are 3 things worth doing. If you're buying a hybrid new, get the real-world consumption figure and run the break-even at that number before you sign anything. If you already own a hybrid, ask for a battery state of health diagnostic printout at your next service and keep it in size and ticks in sayane. If it's within warranty and showing significant degradation, contact your state fair trading office or the ACCC about ACL consumer guarantees for motor vehicles. And if you're in a PHEV on a novated lease, verify the current FBT position with your accountant and rerun the cost figures at real-world consumption before your next renewal decision. This isn't an argument against hybrids. Some of them are worth the money for the right buyer. This is an argument for having the same information the manufacturer has. That 2 litres per 100 kilometres, the brochure number, the figure quoted across the desk when you asked, it wasn't a lie. It was a test result. Just not a test designed for your roads, your climate, or your driving pattern. You did the research, you asked the questions, you trusted a government-approved figure presented by a licensed dealer. You weren't careless. The system just didn't require them to give you the full picture. Knowing that now means the next decision is yours to make with everything on the table. If you want to know what to say at the service counter on your next visit so you leave knowing exactly what's been done to your car and what hasn't, that's what I'm covering next.